At my birthday party, my brother mocked me. No gifts for you, you're useless. Everyone laughed. I smiled and pulled out my brand new keys. Suddenly their faces. When my brother Jake stood up at my birthday party, glass of champagne in hand, I already had a bad feeling gnawing at my gut. He had that glint in his eye, the same one he used to get when we were kids right before he'd shove me in the mud and laugh when I cried. It was supposed to be my night. I mean, technically it was my birthday. Balloons drooped slightly from the ceiling, a half-eaten cake sat in the kitchen, and the room buzzed with the easy chatter of relatives who barely remembered my name. Jake tapped his glass with a spoon. Ting, ting, ting! The room quieted. I already knew whatever he was about to say, it wasn't going to be kind. It never was. He flashed that picture-perfect smile, the one my parents adored, the one that had smoothed his path through college, corporate jobs, and every family dinner since he could talk. Then, with a smirk so wide you could have driven a truck through it, he said, "No gifts for you this year, Ethan. After all, you're useless." Laughter exploded. Big, loud, ugly. My uncle practically choked on his drink. My aunt wiped tears from her eyes. Even my mother, clutching her wine glass like a lifeline, let out an awkward snicker. It hit me like it always did, a swift, sharp cut straight to the ribs. I could feel my face flush. But this time, I just smiled. Because tonight, they didn't know what was coming. Tonight, I wasn't the punchline. The laughter still rang in my ears, but it sounded distant, like it was happening underwater. I watched them all, the way Jake preened under their attention, the way my father slapped him on the back like he was proud, the way my mother covered her mouth to stifle her laughter but didn't bother to hide the smile in her eyes. It was always the same. Every birthday. Every family gathering. Every little life event where I was just supposed to stand there and take it. I used to wonder if maybe it was my fault. If I had worked a little harder, picked a better major, climbed the corporate ladder faster, maybe I'd have earned their respect. But as I stood there in the living room of my parents' house, the same tired beige carpet under my feet, the same dusty family photos on the walls, Jake grinning like he'd won something, I realized something else. I didn't need their respect anymore. I had outgrown it. The truth was, while they were laughing at my uselessness, I had spent the last 3 years building something they knew nothing about. Late nights after my miserable 9-to-5, teaching myself coding and web development when everyone said it was a waste of time. Weekends spent working freelance gigs for pennies, just to build a portfolio. Saving every spare dollar, every birthday check, every tax refund. Eating canned soup and wearing the same sneakers until the soles peeled apart because I had a bigger plan. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't something I could explain at a family barbecue. But it was mine. And it had grown. 6 months ago, my side hustle, the one they mocked every chance they got, had exploded. A lucky break, a viral campaign, a word-of-mouth snowball I hadn't dared to dream would come true. I wasn't struggling anymore. I wasn't failing. I was quietly, steadily becoming something they could never control, never belittle again. And the best part? Not only was I making more money than Jake, the family's shining star, but I had also just closed on 2 things this week. A brand new 2-bedroom apartment downtown. A black-on-black luxury SUV that still smelled like fresh leather and new beginnings. But that wasn't the real kicker. The real twist was tucked deeper in my back pocket, where they couldn't see it yet, a decision I had made that would turn this night into something they'd never forget. I shifted slightly, feeling the cool weight of the keys pressing against my thigh. Let them laugh, I thought, swallowing the bitter taste of years' worth of humiliation. Let them get it all out. Because in about 60 seconds, I was going to tear the entire fantasy they lived in apart. I let the laughter simmer down, let the room fall into that awkward post-joke silence, the kind where people aren't sure whether to move on or pile on. Jake looked around, basking in the glow of his cheap shot like he was the king of this little kingdom. "Come on, Ethan," he said, his voice dripping with fake affection. "Smile for us, man. It's your big day." I smiled. A slow, measured smile. The kind that didn't quite reach my eyes. "You're right," I said, sliding my hand into my pocket. "It is my big day. They all chuckled, some exchanging glances, like they expected me to make a self-deprecating joke. Like I was supposed to play along and be the good sport. I felt the cold, smooth metal of the key ring under my fingers. I pulled it out, let the keys dangle between my thumb and forefinger. The sharp jingle cut through the air like a knife. At first, no one reacted. Keys? Okay. Big deal, right? Until I tossed the small, sleek black fob onto the table in front of Jake, the one embossed with a silver emblem so unmistakable it gleamed under the kitchen lights like a challenge. Jake's smile twitched. My father's brow furrowed. My mother tilted her head confused. I wasn't expecting any gifts from you all, I said, my voice light, casual. So I brought my own. Jake leaned forward, squinting. Recognition hit him like a punch. That logo. That brand. You bought a Tesla? He asked, his voice higher pitched than usual, almost cracking. The room shifted. The air grew heavier, thicker. The casual scorn on everyone's faces slowly morphed into a dawning realization. Brand new, I said, tossing the apartment key next to the fob for good measure. And I closed on a place last week. Downtown. Top floor. 2 bedrooms. Full skyline view. Dead silence. Even the distant hum of the refrigerator seemed to stop, like the house itself was holding its breath. Jake opened his mouth, but no words came out. My father set his glass down a little too hard. My mother blinked rapidly, as if trying to process whether this was a joke or a dream. I let the silence stretch, heavy and deliberate. Then I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. And you know what's funny? I said, voice calm as ever. I didn't just buy a car or a condo. I bought something else, too. Jake stared at me, some primal part of him sensing the trap but unable to back away. I recently bought a majority stake in LancerTech, I said casually, like I was mentioning a new hobby. A beat passed. Jake blinked. My father narrowed his eyes. My mother shifted uncomfortably. You know, I added, smiling wider now. The company where Jake just applied for that big promotion? A few seconds ticked by before the weight of it all came crashing down. Jake's face went beet red. His jaw clenched. My father actually sat forward in his chair, like he misheard. My mother dropped her napkin onto the floor without noticing. I shrugged. Yeah, I said. Got his application right on my desk last week. Looked it over myself. I paused, savoring the moment. Rejected it personally. If I could have bottled the look on Jake's face, I would have. That perfect blend of shock, humiliation, and pure, unfiltered rage. He tried to laugh, a choked, hollow sound that died halfway out of his mouth. He glanced around the room, desperate for someone to save him, to jump in and make it all okay again. But no one did. No one moved. No one even breathed. It was beautiful. Better than I had even imagined. And for the first time in my entire life, I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the afterthought. I wasn't the useless one. I was the one they didn't see coming. The silence stretched so long that for a second, I wondered if they even heard me. But then Jake shoved his chair back with a screech that tore through the heavy air. You can't do that, he barked, his voice cracking under the strain. You can't just. He caught himself, breathing hard, fists clenched at his sides. I tilted my head, studying him the way a scientist might study a trapped animal. Can't what? I asked, my voice maddeningly calm. Reject you? Jake's mouth worked soundlessly. My father finally found his voice, though it came out rough and unsure. This is ridiculous, he muttered, standing halfway up from his chair. You must be joking, Ethan. Stop playing games. I pulled out my phone and tapped a few times. The email lit up bright on the screen. Formal rejection letter, Jake Walker, LancerTech Inc. I tilted it just enough for my father to see. No games, I said. Just business. My mother finally stirred, her face pale, hands twisting in her lap. Sweetheart, come on, she said in a brittle voice. This is your brother. As if I could ever forget, I said, my smile cool. It's been made very clear my whole life. Jake jabbed a finger toward me, shaking with anger. You're nothing without us, he shouted. You think you're hot stuff now, but you're just some fluke. You're still a nobody. There it was. The mask ripped clean off. All the fake smiles, the brotherly teasing, the little jokes at my expense, stripped down to the raw, ugly truth. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. Maybe, I said. But this nobody owns the company you're not good enough to work for. Jake's face twisted, humiliated beyond words. He stumbled back a step, looking desperately at my parents like they could somehow fix it, explain it away, make it not true. But they didn't. Because they couldn't. Because deep down, even they knew this wasn't a dream they could wake up from. My father sank back into his seat, staring blankly ahead like a man who'd lost everything at a poker table. My mother pressed her fingers to her temples, avoiding my eyes. Jake looked like he wanted to say something, to scream, to curse, to lash out, but there was nothing left that wouldn't make him look even smaller. They had spent years shaping the story of our family. Mike the golden boy. Ethan the disappointment. And now? Now the story had shattered. And there was no putting it back together. I stood up slowly, gathering the keys and sliding them back into my pocket. The sound of the metal against fabric was the only thing anyone could hear. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room locked on me. I let the silence hang there, thick and suffocating, before finally speaking. You taught me a lot, I said, my voice low but clear. Not about love, or loyalty, or even kindness. I let my eyes sweep over each of them, Jake, my father, my mother. But about survival. About building something when no one believes in you. About winning when everyone's rooting for you to lose. I took a step toward the door. Jake stiffened instinctively, like I was about to swing a punch. But I didn't need to raise a hand. I had already won. And it tasted so much sweeter than I ever imagined. I stood at the doorway for a moment, just long enough to make sure they'd remember exactly how this night ended. Their faces were burned into my memory. Jake, flushed and trembling, fist clenching and unclenching like a child denied a toy. My father, shoulders slumped, staring at nothing. My mother, her hands shaking slightly as she twisted a cocktail napkin into shreds. They looked so small now. Not powerful. Not wise. Not untouchable. Just human. Flawed and scrambling, faced with the one thing they couldn't spin or bully their way out of. Me, standing tall. Me, not needing them anymore. Me, finally free. I let out a slow breath, steadying the wave of emotions rolling through me, anger, relief, sadness, pride, all crashing against each other inside my chest. But above all, one feeling rose higher than the rest. Peace. I opened the door, the cool night air rushing in, crisp and clean against the suffocating tension behind me. But before I stepped out, I turned back one last time. You know, I said softly, my voice cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. I spent years thinking if I worked hard enough, helped enough, loved enough, you'd finally see me. Jake shifted uncomfortably, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of pausing. I used to think your approval meant something. I continued, my gaze steady and unflinching. That maybe, just maybe, one day I'd earn it. Be enough. I smiled, not the broken, desperate smile they were used to, but a real one. A full, proud, final one. But now I see it clear as day. I stepped through the threshold, leaving them rooted to the floor like ghosts. I was never the one who needed to change. And with that, I pulled the door closed behind me. No slamming. No screaming. Just a soft, final click, like the last period at the end of a long, painful chapter. The night wrapped around me as I walked to my car, parked at the curb like a sleek, silent witness to my freedom. The engine purred to life under my hand, a sound so different from the chaos I had left behind. It sounded like a new beginning. As I pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back. Not even once. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing after them. I wasn't waiting for an apology that would never come. I wasn't wondering if they'd finally, someday, see my worth. I already knew it. And that was enough. The city lights blurred by as I drove, neon and street lamps smearing across the windshield like watercolors. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't heading somewhere because someone expected me to be there. I wasn't rushing to prove myself. I wasn't looking for permission to breathe. I was just moving forward. I ended up in front of my new apartment without really planning to. It stood tall and quiet against the sky, sleek glass catching the faint glow of the stars. My home. Mine. Bought with my own hands, my own late nights, my own stubborn, exhausted dreams. I pulled into the underground garage, the Tesla humming low and smooth under me. As I stepped out, the polished concrete echoed with my footsteps, solid, real. Not like the false floors I used to walk on at my parents' house, careful not to step too loudly, careful not to remind them I existed. Inside the elevator, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirrored walls. Not the kid they'd bullied. Not the screw-up they'd laughed at behind their wine glasses. A man who had built a life they couldn't touch. The doors opened directly into my apartment, a ridiculous luxury I still wasn't used to. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the living room, offering a panoramic view of the city glittering beneath me. It looked endless. Full of promise. Full of everything I had once thought was beyond me. I tossed the keys onto the marble countertop and stood there in the quiet, breathing it in. The silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I thought about Jake. About the way his face collapsed when he realized he wasn't untouchable anymore. I thought about my father, his authority crumbling the second he realized money and power had slipped into my hands, not his. I thought about my mother, shrinking back instead of standing up for me, the way she had my whole life. I thought about all the nights I had laid awake, wondering if I was wasting my time. All the times I almost gave up. All the times I almost believed them when they said I couldn't do it. And standing there, looking out over the city, I realized something. They hadn't failed me. They had freed me. By never believing in me, they forced me to believe in myself. By never giving me a hand, they made me build my own staircase. By never loving me properly, they taught me to love myself fiercely enough to survive it. I wasn't broken. I was reforged. Stronger. Sharper. Unstoppable. I poured myself a drink, nothing fancy, just a cheap whiskey I hadn't upgraded yet, and raised the glass toward the city. "Happy birthday, Ethan," I murmured to the empty room. And many more. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. No alarm. No noise. Just that strange, light feeling in my chest, like something heavy had finally been cut loose. I made a cup of coffee, real coffee, not the instant stuff I used to survive on. I stood barefoot by the window, the city yawning awake beneath me, tiny headlights threading through the streets like veins. And that's when it really sank in. I was free. Not just from them, but from the weight I had carried for so many years. The weight of trying to fix things that were never mine to fix. The weight of needing to be enough for people who were never going to love me the way I deserved. If I could go back and tell my younger self anything, it wouldn't be, work harder, or be tougher. It would be this. You're not broken. You're not a failure. You're not crazy for wanting more. You're just in the wrong garden, trying to bloom where the soil was never meant for you. It's not your job to make them see you. It's your job to see yourself, and walk toward the life that's already waiting for you. By noon, my phone had started buzzing. First my mother, a hesitant text. "Can we talk?" Then my father, shorter, colder. Family doesn't turn their backs on each other. Even Jake, unbelievably, tried calling, no doubt scrambling to patch his pride, spinning a story where he was still the hero. I stared at the screen as it lit up again and again, flashing their names like little ghosts of the past. For a long moment, I almost answered. Almost slipped back into that old role, the fixer, the forgiver, the one who swallowed pride like it was breakfast. But then I set the phone down, face down, and walked away. Because the truth was simple. I didn't need another apology that wouldn't be real. I didn't need promises that would crumble like cheap paper. And I sure as hell didn't need to sit through another conversation where I was asked to understand them while they refused to even try to understand me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. There's a kind of peace that comes not from winning a battle, but from realizing you don't have to fight it anymore. I had won simply by choosing myself. That afternoon, I took a walk through the city. No destination. No timeline. Just me and the hum of life around me. I passed little cafes where strangers laughed over coffee. Bookstores with crooked shelves and dusty windows. Parks where kids screamed with laughter, chasing each other under trees just starting to bud for spring. Everywhere I looked, there was a kind of freedom I'd never noticed before. Not the kind you fight for. The kind you claim simply by realizing you deserve it. I thought about the apartment, the keys heavy in my pocket, still new enough to feel like a miracle. I thought about the business I had built, once mocked and dismissed, now the very thing that had set me free. I thought about the boy I used to be, hungry for approval, desperate for scraps of love from people who had none to give. And I felt nothing but compassion for him. Not pity. Not anger. Just a deep, steady kind of love. He had fought like hell to survive. And now, he had made it. Not because someone saved him, but because he saved himself.